most of us know you, but I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. I think this is your first time meeting Rita, and it might even be your first time meeting Kimberly. So I'll let you go ahead and kind of give them the rundown on your area of expertise.
Okay. I always like to start out by saying I'm just Angela. I hate when you have to do introductions, and I know that you need to, but they just sound so formal and they really don't speak to who you are, but rather what you do and what you have done. So I always like to put it in context. So in that context, I am a cosmetic scientist. My main focus is hair care, but I'm now tapping into skincare. Elaine, I know that's even new to you today. And I'm also inventor of a lot of hair care research, and that mainly was during my tenure with L'Oreal. And did I lose you guys? You still there?
We're all here.
We're here. Okay, my tenure with L'Oreal for 28 plus years as a part of an acquisition of Dark and Lovely. So I started my career right in Savannah, Georgia, which is my hometown, with Carson Products, and then L'Oreal acquired, and I went on to head up all of their ethnic research and innovation for Mazzani and Matrix Brazil and several brands. And now I'm doing what is most important to me, which is serving as a consultant under my company, D&E Industries, Inc. I am the primary and chief consultant for that business, and as well as the chief executive officer. And I help beauty entrepreneurs, I help cosmetic manufacturers, as well as contract manufacturers with their research and development initiatives. So it is more so R&D strategy to assist with protocols or type of development, claim substantiation, and liaison between contract manufacturers and helping beauty entrepreneurs and small businesses understand the ins and outs of contract manufacturing and product development. And I'm proud to be an ANHC team member advisor, and I'm also a Cosmoprof strategic advisor.
Okay. Awesome. So anybody, for those of you who may be new to our Q&A sessions, this is not a presentation. No one's here to talk at you. This is a place for you to ask your questions. This is a conversation, so there'll be some back and forth. And so whenever you feel you can jump in, ask your question. If you don't have any questions and you are here to kind of just listen and collect information, that's understandable. And you can do that as well. So I say that, and I'll say, does anybody have a question about product development or contract manufacturing right now? Go ahead, Mickey.
Hello, everyone. Angela. Hi, everyone. I guess my question, based on what you shared, Angela, is at what phase of the production piece would they meet with you, and then where would they go, need to go maybe before or after meeting with you? So I can refer people, because I have people that have products, have ideas for products and that type of thing, but I'm not clear with where you fit in the puzzle piece.
Very good question. Nice to meet you also, Nikki. I always say that if you don't have a product concept or you haven't established your brand, it is always good to start with a marketing consultant. And we're very fortunate that we have a dear colleague and friend of mine, Sean Tollison, that serves in that capacity. I will say, if you already know exactly what you are trying to develop, you are clear on the type of product you want, and you're clear on your product concept, you can start speaking with me. And then sometimes you can start speaking with me and Sean simultaneously. I always encourage that if you have not started the process at all, it's always best to speak with that marketing consultant because they can give you direction. But I do have clients who are very clear because they are, tenured stylists or trichologists. They know what they've been working with, they know what they want, and they're just looking for specific directions when it comes to actual product development. And that's when they will come, directly to me. And if they don't have the information that I'm seeking, when I start asking them about, their product positioning, because sometimes people use products so they have experience with using specific products. But when you start asking them about their specific product positioning for their launch, then it begins to get a little vague. And if that happens, then that's when I make certain that I introduce them to Sean while we continue to work on the actual physical product. Now, when I say actually work on a physical product, I need to clarify, because in the role that I'm in now, what I'm doing is I actually introduce my clients to either the best formulator / contract manufacturer, or some instances, they're ready to go straight to the contract manufacturer to use a stock formula, or have that contract manufacturer actually do custom development for them. And depending on the quantities that they are looking for initially, and where they are in their thought process as far as the actual benefits that they're looking for from the product, depending on how defined those are at the time that we talk, will determine whether I suggest that they either start with a stock formula, or that they start with a formulator who can give you more one-on-one time, or rather they are ready or not to do customized formulation with the contract manufacturer.
So you mentioned that, or you mentioned the different phases people can be in and the different types of referrals you can do. We do have a member that asked specifically, they have a formula. They have a product out, they have a formula. It's a formula. They've used contract manufacturers in the past, and now they're looking to go back to a contract manufacturer. Is that something that you can help with or advise with, even though it's not the product development phase?
Exactly. Now my focus is more so research and development strategy. So meeting you where you are in the process, determining whether you're looking to use a stock formula, and stock formula is being described in so many different ways. Some people say, okay, it's private label if you want to just take the formula I have to include the fragrance and put it in your packaging. Some will say stock formulations, and they will say that you can use this formula, but I will allow you to switch using one of the fragrance that we own, because they still have that readily available. And then, of course, the customize is I need some changes because I need to change the degree of detangling, or I'm looking for something that provides a little bit more curl definition. In those particular instances, you are altering the performance of the products. So anytime you start altering the performance of the products, then that's when it goes to customized formulation. But if you already have a product and you are just seeking someone to actually help you manufacture, then the recommendation would be based on your minimum quantity, because contract manufacturers vary based on the minimum quantity. Elaine, are we there?
Looks like she froze.
Yes. So Mickey, did that answer your question though? Or do you have some more questions while we on? And I hope her recording is still working.
Yeah, it looks like it's still recording. Yes,
Okay.
that was helpful. That was helpful. So thank you. I don't know if anyone else has any questions.
Yeah, I think if no one else has any questions, I think I probably would like to start from the beginning to differentiate and talk about the different types of services out there and actually give a few recommendations for someone that's considering, starting their formula or looking for a home to have their products manufactured. So if you're starting at the product concept stage and you don't have a product that you've already developed, or you have something that you're working with where you may be currently doing a DIY, but you're ready to have it done, by a chemist and have it ready to be transferred to a contract manufacturer, then there are a couple of individuals that I now work really closely with. One is already a partner of ANHC, and that's Ayari Cosmetics. Again, she is a ANHC partner, and the owner name is Emily Bazemore. And then there are two others. I haven't worked with them directly, but they both are chemists also, and Emily is also a chemist. And that individual name is Vanessa Thomas. And
did they? Who was it? She put
I
out
think
two photos. They were all,
Good. Someone
22,
speakers.
20. I'm like, how many arrested? There was 3 arrests. But I'm
I
like,
think someone's speaker is on it. Probably
it ain't nobody. I thought it would have been like 17,
Looks like Elaine's
16,
back.
like
Yeah, so she would do
22.
it. Elaine,
But the
someone's
people who
speaker
shit
is
they
on,
pulled
so
up
we're
was like
getting all of their
15
back.
and
Yeah, I
16
hear it.
year
I'm
olds.
trying to locate it because I'm on my phone, so it's a little harder.
Boy, they died at 15 and 14.
okay.
Down there about that age. That's the people. Oh,
There we go.
Okay. And so I was just giving I'm gonna give 3 names of chemists who would be good to help with product development that also have relationships with contract manufacturers, and they are research and development chemists. I was sharing with them, one is already a partner with ANHC, and that's Emily Bazemore with Ayari Cosmetics. She does hair care and skin care. And the other 2, I know them within the industry, but I have not personally worked with them on any projects. I have personally worked with Emily before. So I have more insights to what she actually is doing, but I've gotten very good information regarding the other 2. And the other one is Vanessa Thomas. It is freelance formulations. And the third one is MC Group with Erica Douglas. She has a lot of publicity. She does a lot of talks under the name Sister Scientist. And so those are 3 companies that are owned by Black women that I know work with individuals and beauty entrepreneurs because they support extremely small quantities. Now, I will say if you already have your product and you're looking to scale up, again, it depends on the quantity that you are looking to have produced. A lot of the contract manufacturers in the beauty industry requires large minimum quantities. On the average, most of them at least 5,000 plus. However, there are a few contract manufacturers that typically work with formulators, I would say more so than an individual going directly to them and they will produce, smaller quantities. So I suggest that if you're looking to scale up, it is always best to have a formulator that can serve as your consultant as well, or you would have a consultant that would just help you search for the contract manufacturer that will best serve your brand. And the reason why I put emphasis on that, because I know someone may be saying, well, if I already have my formula, why do I need the formulator to help me find a contract manufacturer? And it's because there are other things that are extremely important with that process. One, you want to make certain that the contract manufacturer is GMP certified. So that's basically good manufacturing practices. And you want to be able to understand and see the operations, of their facility and the type of testing that they do on their products to ensure the quality of the products. And so these are things that a consultant can help you ensure, and also be able to take a deeper dive into the raw material vendors that they're using, the sourcing, their practice for manufacturing products for you. So I'm by no means saying that it's something that you cannot do on your own, but I will say that it is, important. It is important that you have someone that you can at least get the right questions from, so that you can ask them yourself, or you can actually let them be the liaison between you and the contract manufacturer.
That was, I came out and came back in, but that was the exact question I was going to ask. I don't know who asked you that question, but I'm glad they did.
And I don't even know if they did, or I just started talking, because I know it's a few points based on my experience up to this point that I want to make certain that I share. And another point that I want to make certain that I share also is that you have to be mindful that the smaller the quantity, then typically the higher your pricing is going to be. And that's even more so now than ever, because of all the challenges with the supply chain. We know everything is higher now, whether you go into the grocery store, whether you're going to get gas, everything in the ecosystem is now costing more. And so is to expect that would trickle on down to the cosmetic industry, because they too have to source raw material, they have to source packaging. And so in addition to increase a cost, there are more extensive, I would say, timelines. The timelines to get something done has been significantly lifting. It's one of those days, you guys, has been extremely long. It has been lengthened. That process has, because the contract manufacturer has no control over the receipt of packaging or raw materials. And so there are several other players at all phases in this process that contributes to the overall timeline, which I've seen drastic changes since COVID.
Mm.
No, that's good information.
Mhm.
Oh, so there was if someone else has a question, please jump in.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shanae, and I have a question. Ms. Ellington, you mentioned earlier that you said entrepreneurs sometimes have a problem with ordering because the quantity, sometimes the minimum is about 5,000. So as you know, due to the pandemic, there's a lot of, it's been an influx of small entrepreneurs. And I'm one of them. And I also understand that sometimes that 5,000 is not where I begin. I may begin at 500. Do you have any recommendations for the thousands of other small entrepreneurs who are within that? Because eventually we would like to scale up, but how do we begin? Can you help me figure that out? Thank you.
Well, first, congratulations. And that's an excellent question. And it's a battle that I actually deal with on behalf of my clients all the time. So it's two options you have. One is to get with a formulator that's already connected to a contract manufacturer, because that contract manufacturer is more likely to do smaller quantities for them than they may do for a beauty entrepreneur coming to them making that request. And the reason for that is okay, it's about relationships. They know that you're going to have some small clients, and they know that you're going to also bring them some large clients. So it's a balance effect. There's also some contract manufacturers that focus on smaller brands, and MCs is one of those companies. And also Ayari Cosmetics, who is again a partner with A&HC Pro. So there's not as many, unfortunately, that actually focus on the 500 minimum. And there are fewer now than ever before, where it should be the opposite. But if you understand that from their point of view, it makes it difficult for them to be able to focus on the 500 when they're paying much more for everything that they have to make. And so at the end of the day, and I've heard it from some contract manufacturers, they may do it if they see the potential growth, but a lot of times they're not making money if they agree to do a product and the quantity is 500, because they're paying more for everything, unless they charge you a price that is extremely high per unit. So I am very thankful that a lot of contract manufacturers, they are trying to make the commitment to only accept to do the 500 if they can keep the price where they feel like it's least reasonable. They don't want to charge someone $15 per bottle when they probably going to sell it for 20, and the $15 per bottle doesn't include your packaging or your label. And so it's just a very, unique time for everyone during this period. And that's why I say it's always best, if you don't need the formulator to be your consultant, still find a consultant that has those relationships or can work and speak with you on your behalf. And the two that I highly recommend, if you want to work, with the formulator, as well as have a small quantity produced, would be, again, Ayari Cosmetics and MC's group. And Valerie Thomas, I keep forgetting because I may have spoken with her one time, and that's freelance formulation.
Thank you. That was info packed. Thank you. I'm just grateful for that information and the information that you discussed before. I have another question, but I want to give someone else a chance, and then I'll ask my question.
And I was going to say, even if you want to ask your question, Elaine, know that I'm okay if we end up going a little bit over, because your question, you may forget that question that you're getting ready to ask. And 9 out of 10, your question is also someone else's question. So it won't keep them from asking. I will make the commitment to make certain that I answer everyone's question on this call.
So I'll go right in.
Okay.
So I would like, I'm very interested in the 3 chemists, consultants that you did mention. I would like their information. So I was wondering if there's some way you can type it in the chat, or after the meeting, we can receive the details and the best way to contact them if possible. And yes. This is a very interesting topic for me, because I'm in a room with a lot of people, small entrepreneurs in cosmetics or the beauty industry. And we're all scraping around and searching for these answers. And here you are, you know, answering. So I'm glad to give this information back. Excuse me. So another question I have, or maybe just epiphany, I would like to discuss with you. It seems that because you said about a formulator, we should get a formulator who is in contact with a contract manufacturer, because it's kind of like levels to it, like a hierarchy or something like that.
Yeah, and it's a relationship. It goes back to,
Right.
they may be able to get things done that you may not be able to going directly to the contract manufacturer.
So it seems like it makes sense for small entrepreneurs to get together. If, for example, I needed 500, maybe, you know, 5 of us get together, we can create a larger amount, or maybe, you know, 10 of us get together, we can create that amount. And what do you think about that? Is there something like that? Is there association? Is there a location or a place where we can find the 3 lovely people that we could connect with? Do you have any information about that?
I would say in that particular case, that would be a solution if you were all 3 or all 5 were using the exact same formula, which people do that. They'll call it the stock formula, where you're basically using the contract manufacturer formula and their fragrance. And so that minimum quantity could be split amongst 3 or 4 different entrepreneurs, and you're putting it in your package with your label. Most of the time, that's not the case. That's not the case, because, you know, our beauty is very unique, and how we actually share that experience with our customers are also unique. So when you start making changes, even if the changes is what I call marketing ingredients, changes that you are making to tell your story, that now makes it a different formula. And so they can't be combined, because it's now a different formula than what your colleague would be launching or be interested in having made.
So go ahead, Angela.
But with that being said, say for instance, if there were 3 or 4 people, and it's like, okay, yes, they can only have 500 made, but then that's a consultant like me that's push your potential and push the potential of taking on the growth that could occur when you're taking on 4 people who have put in the work. They have a clear plan. Their brand has been clearly defined, and they're driven. So that's why I say having someone to work with you that speaks the contract manufacturer language, knows the process and the operations, then they're able to get them to agree to do smaller quantities with no additional, increase of charge, drastic increase of charge. Of course, it may be some, but when I say for them to compensate for ordering the same quantity of raw materials, because the raw material supplier has a minimum quantity, and that minimum quantity is probably going to far exceed the 500 that you need. So it is very, reasonable for them to charge what appears to the buyer as an astronomical amount. So you need someone to kind of show and give the vision of how this would benefit long term. And then sometime that consultant also, support some of their other initiatives to kind of help bring value to the relationship. And that is something that I, do as a part of D&E Industries, Inc. It's more so R&D strategy to build relationships now between contract manufacturers and beauty entrepreneurs. That's not how I started, but I believe is when you see a problem that constantly surfaces, then what I know, what I taught is you tackle the problem head on. And so that's when I took a change in strategic direction and say, I can make a bigger impact if I focus on making certain that beauty entrepreneurs would have the opportunity not just to create the formula, but to actually have the product made. Whereas when I first started, my focus was more so formulation work, and I had a relationship with one contract manufacturer. And then when I took a deeper dive, I realized that that wasn't really even the best fit. So you really have to immerse yourself in the process and be that voice for all your clients.
And I wanted to jump in and just let Ms. Gibson know that she had a special invite for this session, but normally these sessions with Angela are only for our Indie Beauty members. The recording will be on will be behind a paywall for the Indie Beauty members. But if you have specific questions that you have following this, I put the email contact us at ANHC Pro in the chat, so that you can, if you have a specific question, I can get you the answer back. But that won't be this won't be distributed among all of our members. This is strictly an Indie Beauty perk as being an Indie Beauty member of ANHC. That was it. That was my plug.
That's great. That was great. And that is true. And Elaine know that if she sends me a question, I'm going to respond, because we want to educate, mentor, and help, all of our Indie Beauty members. And I applaud you, Elaine, for giving others the opportunity during this time to at least get some of their questions asked. But there definitely are a lot more questions and a lot more information, that will be needed.
Yeah, this is obviously a tremendous resource. You're a tremendous resource for our members, as well as our other members that are in the Indie Beauty space. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there, because I know Ms. Gibson will be looking for that information. So just email me and we'll have that information. But if anybody has any other questions about product manufacturing, product development. Oh, Angela, I have a question. That was back to what you were talking about. It sounds like what she's talking about is similar to if she were just to go to a white label brand or seek out a white label brand that was already doing a product that she liked. Is that not kind of the same as a bunch of people getting together so that they can have the resource so they can get smaller quantities? Is that not similar to that?
And
Okay.
that's why, yes, that's why I was sharing, if they're going to use like the same fragrance, and people do it, you know that sometimes someone smell a product like, seem like I smelled that before. They probably have smelled that before, because in that situation, they probably are using what they refer to now as stock formulas. Before, I used to refer to them all as white label, but now contract manufacturers like to say we either have stock or we have custom. In the stock, you can take it as is with one of their fragrances, or with stock, they will let you switch the fragrance or maybe 2 or 3 marketing augmentation ingredients. Anything other than that makes it change it to a custom formulation, which then the cost goes up because it requires their internal R&D team to do lab work. So that's why I said your product concepts need to be clear from the beginning, because I always suggest if you're going to do customized formulation, do it with a chemist, an external chemist that works more intimately with the beauty entrepreneur, and would be more transparent on whether you're going to be able to own that formula or not, and would be more open to creating a process where you can own that formula. Now, I know I don't want to go too deep into this next conversation, but I must at least put this out there. If you go to a contract manufacturer, you need to make certain you have the conversation before you sign any agreement. You need to make certain that it is written in the agreement that you will have ownership of the formula. Be mindful. I've had clients come to me and they say, I own the formula. And I look at the contract and I say, no, you don't own the formula. You own the product. And the product they're referring to is once that formula is put into your packaging, that's not the same as owning the formula. You want to own the bulk that they are putting in your product. And it can happen, but no one is just going to give that to you. That's something that you have to request, and they will always tell you that you own it, that it's always yours. It's available to you anytime that you want to order it. And all of that is true, but you never know if something happens to that contract manufacturer or your relationship change, and now they're holding all of the cards in their hands, because you're going to have to pay for someone to reverse engineer. And there's no guarantee that it would be exactly the same, but you will have to at least attempt to have it reverse engineer or change your formula. So it is something that you definitely not only need to make that decision up front, but you need to be able to have someone review the contract to make certain that it is written to mean what they're telling you that it actually means.
Yeah, and I guess also knowing because I guess also knowing the difference, because some people on their first go round don't look to own the formula, or they look to own the formula, but you may advise them that that might not be where they are financially, or where they are even in their planning. So because you own your first formula and then you decide that it's not the right formula. I know the right.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's different situations where you don't necessarily want to own the formula, or you may not recommend to own the formula, but it needs to be understood. So you never want to be walking around thinking you own a formula that you don't own.
And to your point, Elaine, I'm happy you brought that up. And it goes back to, again, a lot of times, if you've already spoke with the marketing consultant, you kind of already laid the blueprint is there. You know what you are trying to do as far as brand development. Some individuals, and I have worked with beauty entrepreneurs, I'm not going to say individuals, because there's some beauty entrepreneurs that said, I want to just sell some products initially to see if this is something that I want to do long term. It may be something that I'm interested in doing now, but I don't know if I want to make the investment that would be required for long term. I always share with those clients that you need to find a stock formula that you like. You buy the samples, you test it. If it works for you, you go for it. It's minimal investment in that. When you decide to do custom formulation, I say you should know that this is something that you really want to invest into. And it doesn't mean that, you're going to do it for the rest of your life, because we all pivot. If that's the case, I will still be working in corporate, right? So you have the right to pivot, but it means that you are invested. You're more invested in the process. Doesn't mean that you like the product any less, but you're more invested in the process, which is going to include, it's a lot of details, and you have to learn. You should be just as engaged in the process as the person that's providing you the information. And I would say I've been very fortunate about that. I have my clients, they ask me question after question after question. I give them information, they come back. So you know that they are really, really engaged you know that they're engaged in the process. And so you don't mind even going a little bit further in those type of relationships because they're giving so much of themselves. And so it just depends on where you are. It doesn't make you a better person than the other. It just depends on what's your goals and your objectives, and be clear and move towards them.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what you said, yeah, it depends on, and I'm sure Sean has clients that can relate to this. On you may be selling your brand may be your styling and your technique, and your product may be your add-on, and maybe that's not where you want to make that monetary investment initially. And we are talking the difference in thousands of dollars. It's not like we're talking pennies, right? But we also have a question in the chat, and I think it's kind of goes back to something you talked about earlier about getting with a formulator to connect with a manufacturer. The question is, what if you have your own formula and you're trying to connect, or it says and connect with the manufacturer?
Now, there are some manufacturers that will take your formula. They will either, they're going to do one or two things. They're going to take your formula and then they'll charge you for the lab work to make the batch, to do stability, to make certain that your formula is stable. If your formula is not stable, or if your formula is not compliant, and what I mean compliant is that if you're using ingredients that once they do their regulatory check and they see that those ingredients should not be used at that level, because that's the other biggest challenge sometimes with DIY. And I say sometimes because it's not all the time. Sometimes they will see ingredients, and these ingredients are in all cosmetic products, but the level that they have it in their formula is higher than the amount that's actually allowed. So in some instances, more is not better, because more will force you your formula to become compliant. Once they have to make changes to their formula, now you're paying for a customized formula anyway. So I would say before you take your formula to a contract manufacturer, you should connect with a consultant, and that is another service that I provide, just to review your formulation for compliance purposes. Make certain your formula is compliant. If your formula is compliant, then you can take it to the contract manufacturer, make certain that the paperwork is clear, that you will remain ownership. Because there are some contract manufacturers, if they take your formula and they say, well, we had to switch out one ingredient because it wasn't compliant, or you told us when we made it for you, your exact formula, but when we made it using our process, you said you needed a little bit more detangling. So we adjusted the formula to give you more detangling. Now we own the formulas, our intellectual property, because we had to make a change for you. And so it belongs to us. And so the best way to get around that is to still have, a consultant look at your formula first, so you would significantly reduce the risk of the contract manufacturer and have to make changes. Some contract manufacturers, they're not even going to be that invested. If they agree to do it, they may say, sign this waiver saying that you are totally liable, responsible. We're not guaranteeing stability. We're not guaranteeing anything, but we will make it and we're going to charge you for it. I don't know if some people are like, okay, that's good because I have the confidence. That's high risk. That's high risk.
Okay. She said thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
Oh, wow. No, okay. And it's funny because she asked the question in a different way, because I was like, oh, I think we already answered that question, but no, you had.
That's why I say if you think of a question, ask it, because it doesn't take much for it to be different, because the category is huge. I mean, it's just so much information. I'm pretty certain when we hang up, I'm like, man, I should have discussed this with them. But it's just a lot of information. It's one of those scenarios, like we say, Rome wasn't built in a day. I mean, this is an accumulation of, experience, knowledge, changing processes, and even more recently, immersing myself into the process because I didn't like the outcomes for my my clients. So I was like, okay, it's time to switch and make certain that I fully immerse myself in the process.
No, that's huge. Now we kind of adapt a little bit into, well, first, let's make sure that based on that answer that we go back to the ownership question, because you said it, but I just want to make sure people heard it because now you're talking something different. You just say, oh yeah, hey, can you make my formula? They make your formula. I don't know what kind of contract there is, I don't know what kind of agreement, but you have to make sure that they're either not changing it, and then like you said, there's some sort of waiver or whatever, but if they are changing it, you guys have an agreement on what that means and what that
Yes.
costs for you to maintain your ownership.
Yes, because what the agreement could look like is that, stating that you have ownership of your formula. And then in another section, it will say, we will make your formula, send it to you for approval. If you don't approve the formula, then we will take it back to our lab. So now their lab is really coming involved, and we will make changes until you approve the formula. The thin line in between there some way is stating, well, if you'd have went back to our definition of stock formula versus customized formula, then you would have known that you just switched to a customized formula. Because remember earlier I said customized formula is when you're changing ingredients, whether it's the ingredients name, most of the time it is name. It's not as much when it's just a ratio. If someone do that and they just change percentage, shame on them, but they can say that it still was a change. So when you start making changes that impacts the performance, not the marketing story, but the performance, now that's customized formula, because your formula before didn't have the same smoothness qualities or the same detangling qualities as this new formula. So this new formula belongs to them. Now you still can own your own formula, but the new formula belongs to them. So you need to make certain that you clarify that it's really noted that you need to know the degree of change that would change ownership in formulation, because that you're not interested in. And the best way to control that is to work with a independent chemist or formulator to do the same thing, make the product, because they're working in the mindset, the same process as a contract manufacturer, make those changes with that formulator before going to the contract manufacturer. If you choose to go to the contract manufacturer directly, then just make certain that it is well documented that you pay to have a consultant look at it before you sign it.
Okay. So that and every time you say consultant, I'm thinking D&E Industries. I know that's not, I know you're not saying that it has to be you, but I'm saying that is something that you can do. So I just want to be,
I'm really bad about that. You always help me. Yes, when I say consultant, I am speaking, I will be a option. Right. I am totally open to you going to see anyone. My objective here is to provide the information that you need so that you will have what you need, regardless of who you go and see. That's my objective here.
Okay. And of course, you are our preferred consultant in this area because we know your integrity and we know your talent and your ability. So those are critical. That's why you're on the team. So yeah, you're always our first choice.
Yes, and Indie Beauty members can ask me a specific question.
Right. Excellent. we have about 7, 8 minutes. Anybody else have any questions? This is rare air. Well, we got Angela's time, so I highly recommend if you all think of anything, go ahead and ask while we have her on the line. Wow. Okay. So, oh.
I
Demetrius
look
says she-
forward to speaking with you, Demetrius.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to think because I know some people have asked me questions offline. I just want to see if I can think of any. You definitely answered it about if you have your own formula. We talked a little bit about ownership, which is always a big question on whether they own the formula or not. And
oh, I have another one too. When it comes to contract manufacturers, you also, and I think I said at the beginning, GMP, you want to make certain they have good manufacturing procedures and you want to make certain they certified there. But you also want to make certain that they're doing, micro tests on the boat. Because when a product is recalled, and it's not quite often, it is a lot of times due to micro challenges. So you want to make certain that you have someone review, their quality test and make certain they give you a certificate of analysis every time. I hear some people like, oh, we give it to you at the initial batch. No, you should have it every batch. Make certain that you get a certificate of analysis. I would even ask them for what we call as a safety data sheet. It used to be material safety data sheet. I won't go too deep in this because Margaret is by far the quality expert. But when you're just looking for a contract manufacturer, you want to make certain that they are, they are really making a quality product, and their factory should say that. You can't say that you're making a quality product and you go into the factory and it's not a place that you even really want to sit down. So if it looks dirty, then it is dirty, and then there's a high risk of contamination. So you don't want to do that.
that's good. And you did make me think of something else. Where does claim substantiation fall into this process?
Yes, and because I was focusing about contract manufacturers, because that has been,
Yeah,
that's the problem. I'm like, I got to do something that just impacts too many beauty entrepreneurs. But you're right, a part of R&D strategy is clearly claim substantiation. You have to, well, I always say have to, because that's me, it may be the chemist and the mom coming in me, but you really should make certain that your claims are validated, because there are a lot of claims and they sound really good. And then when I look at them as a person who's worked very closely in this process during my tenure at L'Oreal, I'm like, you can't say that. And a lot of times it's one word off or switching the structure, the sentence structure, and you're okay. But it can cost you a lot of money. But the good thing is, in most incidents, what it costs at the most is you may get a letter and they tell you to stop it, especially when you're a smaller brand, because the bigger brands don't want to really do it to the smaller brands. But don't think that they're not watching. They're policing because they have restrictions. They have a R&D team and a legal team that this is what they spend a lot of time on. And I'm not just saying that, I'm saying part of my experience. So it is frustrating for larger companies because they know they can't say what you're saying, but you are constantly entering their space and doing quite well. And so it's that kind of like, should we do something about this because it's really just that wrong or not? Most of the time, nobody wouldn't do it. It would be someone else maybe sending something in writing to like the Federal Trade Commission that they feel like, okay, I had a bad experience because this product told me that it was going to grow my hair, and it did not grow my hair. Or this product told me it was going to stimulate my scalp, but instead it burned my scalp. And a lot of times that happens, again, going back to raw materials. If raw materials is good, you may see data about stimulation, but they didn't tell you at 1% or at 2%. And if you don't know the range not to exceed from a safety issue, now you have another challenge. So for me, a part of claim substantiation is also looking at the ingredient listing, and as well as the claims, and apply my regulatory experience and working closely with regulatory, because I never was actually in the regulatory department. I was the liaison between regulatory and the attorney in the lab. And so, to apply that knowledge and insight to make recommendation. And I never tell somebody they have to change. I give them a recommended change. And then I also provide them information, whether it's a low risk, medium risk, or high risk, and let them make the decision, because it is your brand and it should be your decision. My job is just, again, as I said, for this entire call, is to provide you with the information and make you aware. Because I always say knowledge is the real power. And so just to empower you to be able to make the decision that's best for you and your brand.
Excellent. And I will say, because everything you said, you could have talked on for an hour or more. But fortunately, we have a full hour of you talking about claim substantiation. So that is in our video library, where you really break it down and talk about the ins and outs, and actually spell out what things, give examples of claims and those things. We have hit the hour.
Yes. Okay, I knew you was going to keep track. I didn't know I was going to have some added music, but okay, we here.
Oh man. So unless someone's just got a super pressing question, I'm going to not take up the rest of anyone's day. This recording will be in the Indie Beauty video library for everyone. And those of you who are not Indie Beauty members, you can reach me at contact@anhcpro.org for any questions you have, or even if you want to talk about what all's involved with being an Indie Beauty member. So, Angela, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. It's always my pleasure.
Wonderful.
Congratulations to all of the beauty entrepreneurs now and in the making. I love this industry.
Me too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.